What if the most dangerous mission of your life led you straight into the arms of your enemy, when Earth spy Elias faces the ruthless ice princess of the Dominion? Neither expects their confrontation to awaken an ancient power beneath the frozen planet Vyronis, or the forbidden attraction that could either doom or save two civilizations. Ready to discover what happens when ice meets fire in the coldest corners of space. I still remember the first time I saw her, Princess Kayla of the Dominion, standing there like winter itself had taken human form. The relentless winds of Vyronis howled around us, each snowflake sharp enough to draw blood. My cracked helmet offered little protection against the cold, but I'd be damned if I'd show weakness now. Why aren't you trembling, human? Her voice cut through the storm, clear as crystal and twice as dangerous. One word from me and Shardfang will tear you to pieces. The beast beside her, half reptile, half nightmare, snapped its crystalline teeth, frost billowing from nostrils that could freeze a man solid in seconds. 9 feet of pure predator engineered by the Dominion to hunt humans like me. I smiled, though she couldn't see it beneath my damaged visor. Trembling would be an insult to the storm itself, Princess. Her eyes narrowed, violet irises glowing against the white backdrop of endless snow. You dare mock me on the edge of death? I dare many things, that's why I'm here, isn't it? The cliff edge beneath my boots crumbled, slightly one step back, and I'd plummet thousands of feet to the ice canyons below. One step forward, and I'd be in striking distance of Shardfang's claws, but I'd faced worse odds. Earth had faced worse odds. You have courage, I'll give you that. She dismounted from her beast with inhuman grace, her ceremonial armor catching what little sunlight penetrated the endless clouds. But courage alone won't save your species. It's not courage, I replied, my fingers still wrapped around my weapon's grip. It's certainty. Certainty of what? She circled me, now predatory curious. That there's more to this game than you're telling me. For just a moment, brief as a heartbeat, I caught something in her expression. Surprise, respect. Whatever it was vanished quickly beneath the imperial mask she wore so well. Remove your helmet, she commanded suddenly. If you're to die here, at least face your end with dignity. I knew what she wanted to see, fear in my eyes, to witness the submission Earth had refused to give the Dominion for decades. But I also knew something she didn't, that my mission went far beyond mere espionage. The technology hidden beneath Vyronis' frozen surface could shift the balance of power across 17 star systems. As you wish, Princess. I reached up slowly, disengaging the seal with a hiss of escaping air. The brutal cold hit my face like a physical blow, but I didn't flinch, wouldn't flinch. When the helmet came away, Kayla's perfect composure faltered just for a second. Whatever she'd expected to see in this human spy, it wasn't me. Surprised? I asked, feeling the wind whipping through my hair. You're... she began, then stopped herself. Shardfang growled, sensing its master's confusion. Before she could finish her thought, the distinctive whine of a hover ship cut through the storm. Reinforcements had arrived. But whose, mine or hers? It seems our private conversation is about to become a public affair, I said, nodding toward the approaching lights. This changes nothing, human, she hissed. But I could tell it changed everything. Whatever game we were playing had just gained new players. The hover ship broke through the cloud cover, the insignia of the Dominion Marshal emblazoned on its side. Not my people then, which meant I was still very much alone on this frozen hell of a planet. Princess Kayla, a voice boomed across the icy expanse. Stand aside. The human spy is to be executed immediately. I recognized that voice. Marshal Orvin, the true power behind the Dominion's expansion and the architect of attacks that had claimed thousands of human lives. If he was here personally, then my mission was even more important than I'd been told. Kayla's expression hardened, but not before I caught something unexpected in her eyes. Resentment. Not toward me, but toward the Marshal. Lower your weapon, she said quietly, just between us, and I might just let you live long enough to learn why you were really sent here. The storm intensified around us as if the planet itself was holding its breath. I had seconds to decide surrender to Kayla or face certain death at Orvin's hands. I chose the only option that made sense. I dropped my weapon. What happened next would change not just my fate, but the fate of two civilizations locked in a dance of destruction. If you're captivated by this cosmic standoff, hit that subscribe button now to find out what happens when a human spy faces the throne of ice itself. Drop a comment telling me what you think Kayla's secret really is. I read every single one. And stay tuned for part 2, where we dive deeper into the frozen world of Vyronis and the dangerous game that's just beginning. As Marshal Orvin's ship descended, I got my first clear view of the man who'd ordered the deaths of thousands. Tall even for a Dominion elite with skin so pale, it was almost translucent, a mark of pure bloodlines they took such pride in. His ceremonial armor bore the marks of 17 successful campaigns against lesser species. 3 of those marks represented human colonies. "You overstep your authority, Princess," Orvin announced as he strode toward us, flanked by guards whose armor made Kayla's look practically decorative. This human was found within 50 meters of a Class 1 restricted facility. I kept my face neutral, though inwardly I was cataloging everything. Class 1. So the intelligence was correct. Vyronis wasn't just another frontier outpost. It was home to something the Dominion valued above almost anything else. "And I captured him, Marshal," Kayla replied, her voice carrying that peculiar blend of deference and defiance that only royalty could manage. "Therefore, his fate is mine to decide." The planet around us was as harsh a world as I'd ever infiltrated. Vyronis, named after some ancient Dominion deity of winter, was technically habitable, but only in the way a knife's edge is technically a surface you can balance on. The atmosphere was breathable, but so cold it could freeze your lungs if you inhaled too quickly. The gravity was slightly higher than Earth standard, enough that you felt it in your joints after a few hours. But what made Vyronis truly special wasn't its punishing environment, it was what lay beneath the ice. Something the Dominion had been developing in secret for years. Something worth stationing a princess to guard. Taking him to the Citadel would be more appropriate, Orvin insisted, his eyes never leaving my face. Better facilities for interrogation, and better opportunities for him to disappear into one of your private research programs. Kayla's tone remained cordial, but the implication was clear. There was no love lost between these two powers of the Dominion. I decided to test the waters. "I'm standing right here, you. No, if you're going to discuss my imminent torture, I'd appreciate being part of the conversation." Both Kayla and Orvin looked at me with what I can only describe as identical expressions of shocked disdain, as if a laboratory specimen had suddenly offered commentary on the experiment. "Humans," Orvin almost spat the word, always mistaking tolerance for equality. But Kayla's reaction was more complex. For just a moment, I caught something like curiosity in her eyes. "You'll come to my fortress," she declared, ending the debate with Orvin. "Here I can properly assess what you know about our operations here." As they marched me toward Kayla's transport, I got my first real view of the Dominion's presence on Vyronis. The fortress rose from the ice like it had grown there, all crystalline spires in geometric precision. No human architecture could match it, not because we lacked the technology, but because no human mind would conceive of beauty quite so cold. I'd been briefed extensively on Vyronis before this mission. Officially, it was listed as a resource extraction point in Dominion records that our spies had intercepted. Unofficially, the pattern of supply ships and the energy signatures our long-range scanners had detected told a different story. Whatever they were building here wasn't just about mining the planet's rich deposits of quantum-stabilizing minerals. It was about changing the very nature of the war between our species. "Your reputation precedes you, Elias," Orvin said suddenly as we approached the fortress, using my name for the first time. The fact that he knew it wasn't surprising. What was surprising was his willingness to acknowledge that I existed as an individual at all. The Dominion typically referred to humans by designation numbers, not names. "Should I be flattered?" I asked. "3 of our outposts infiltrated, 2 research vessels compromised." His voice remained measured, but I could hear the hatred underneath. "And now you appear on our most sensitive facility in the sector. One might almost admire your species' persistence if it weren't so futile." Kayla shot him a look that I couldn't quite interpret. "Perhaps you underestimate them, Marshal, a dangerous habit." "With respect, Princess, I have been fighting humans since before you completed your first metamorphosis. I know exactly what they are capable of." He turned his gaze to me. "The question is whether this one will reveal what he knows willingly or require more persuasive methods." The fortress entrance yawned before us, a massive doorway carved from what appeared to be a single crystal of impossible size. As we passed through, I felt a subtle hum of energy fields washing over me, no doubt scanning for weapons or transmitters they might have missed in their initial search. They wouldn't find anything. I'd come to Vyronis clean. The intelligence I needed to gather wasn't the kind that could be transmitted by any device. In HFYLegendsOfZang society, the temperature was marginally warmer, though still cold enough that my breath clouded before me. The corridors were lined with what looked like ice, but was actually some kind of living crystal that pulsed with faint bioluminescence. It was beautiful in an alien way, like walking through the veins of some vast, frozen creature. "Impressive, isn't it?" Kayla asked, noticing my gaze. "The entire structure is a single organism, growing, adapting, protecting us." "Is that what the Dominion calls protection?" I nodded toward a chamber we passed, where I glimpsed what appeared to be weapons testing. "Looks more like preparation for something else." Orvin's hand closed around my upper arm, fingers digging in with just enough pressure to serve as a warning. "Careful, human. Curiosity has steep consequences here." But Kayla intervened, her voice carrying that unquestionable authority again. "The prisoner will be taken to the East Wing interrogation suite." My interrogation suite. "Princess Protocol dictates." "I'm well aware of Protocol, Marshal. I'm also aware that my father, the Emperor, placed me in command of this facility." Her smile could have frozen hydrogen. "Unless you are questioning that appointment?" The tension between them was thick enough to cut. I filed that away for future use. Division among the Dominion elite was rare and potentially exploitable. As guards led me away, I took one last look at the central chamber of the fortress. Something massive was under construction there, hidden beneath sheets of the same living crystal that formed the walls. Whatever it was, it pulsed with energy and a rhythm that seemed almost familiar, almost human. And that's when I knew that my mission was even more critical than Earth Command had realized. The Dominion wasn't just building a new weapon on Vyronis. They were building something that could change the fundamental rules of our conflict, something that blurred the lines between their technology and ours. The doors to Kayla's private section of the fortress sealed behind us with a sound like breaking ice. Shardfang followed, its massive claws clicking against the crystalline floor, eyes never leaving me. The beast's intelligence was evident in its gaze. This wasn't just some animal. It understood exactly what I was and what threat I might represent. "Now," Kayla said once we were alone, her voice dropping to a register that sent an entirely different kind of chill down my spine. "Let's dispense with the pretense, shall we? You and I both know you're not just any The question is, how much do you really know about what's happening on Vyronis? And how far are you willing to go to find out more?" Her violet eyes held mine, and I realized we were about to begin a game far more dangerous than simple interrogation. The frozen heart of this mystery was just beginning to reveal itself. Want to find out what sinister secret lies beneath the ice of Vyronis? Hit subscribe right now, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you won't miss part 3, where the dangerous dance between Elias and Princess Kayla takes an unexpected turn. Drop a comment below with your theories about what the Dominion is really building. I read every single one. Kayla's private chambers were nothing like I expected. Instead of the sterile, militaristic environment that dominated the rest of the fortress, her space was adorned with artifacts from a dozen worlds, including, I noticed with surprise, several pieces that appeared to be of human origin. A leather-bound book, a small wooden carving, a vintage timepiece that had to be at least 2 centuries old. "You admire Earth craftsmanship," I remarked, nodding toward the collection. She moved toward a control panel, adjusting the room's temperature. "Not warmer for my comfort," I noticed, "but actually colder. A power play." "I study my enemies," she replied, but there was something in her tone that didn't quite match her words. "Know thy opposition better than they know themselves," the first rule of strategic dominance. And the second rule, never reveal how much you know. Kayla turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "A principle you seem to have mastered yourself, Elias." Shardfangs circled the perimeter of the room, those intelligent eyes never leaving me. The beast was even more impressive up close. Its scales weren't simply armored, but seemed to shift slightly with each movement, adapting to the environment. Bioengineered perfection. "Your pet seems restless," I observed. "Shardfang is no pet." There was pride in her voice now, genuine emotion breaking through the imperial mask. He is the culmination of 3 generations of genetic artistry. There are only 5 like him in existence, and he has chosen me as his rider. Chosen, not been assigned to you because of your royal status. Her eyes flashed dangerously. Mock me if you wish, human, but there are aspects of Dominion culture you cannot begin to comprehend. The bond between rider and beast is sacred. I took a calculated risk. Like the bond between the Dominion and the technology you're developing beneath this fortress. The temperature in the room seemed to drop another few degrees. Kayla's expression hardened, but before she could respond, a soft chime echoed through the chamber. A communication alert. She moved to a crystalline panel on the wall, placing her palm against it. Marshal Orvan's face appeared projected in the air between us. Princess, the Emperor requests a status update on the prisoner. He announced formal, but with that undercurrent of hostility I'd noticed before. Inform my father that interrogation is proceeding as planned, she replied smoothly. Orvan's eyes shifted slightly, taking in the scene behind her, me unrestrained, standing in her private chambers rather than a cell. Perhaps more conventional methods would be advisable. Your concern is noted, Marshal. Kayla's tone made it clear the discussion was over. I will provide a full report at the scheduled time. Nothing more, nothing less. The projection vanished, but the tension remained. Kayla turned back to me, something new in her expression, calculation, and perhaps a hint of defiance. He doesn't trust your methods, I observed. Orvan doesn't trust anything he can't control directly. She moved closer, studying me with those disconcerting violet eyes. And he especially doesn't trust humans. He lost family in the Proxima conflict. I kept my expression neutral, though the mention of Proxima stirred memories I'd rather keep buried. Many people lost family there, on both sides. Indeed, she circled me, now predatory yet curious. Which brings us to the question of why Earth would send their most accomplished operative to a facility they officially don't know exists. I met her gaze steadily. The same reason the Dominion would station a princess to guard it, I imagine. Because what's happening here changes everything. You're very confident for someone in your position. And you're very conversational for someone who's supposed to be torturing information out of me. To my surprise, a smile flickered across her face. Not the cold, practiced tyranny of diplomacy, but something more genuine, more dangerous. There are many forms of interrogation, Elias. Not all involve physical pain. She gestured to a chair carved from the same living crystal as the walls. Sit. If you're to be my guest rather than my prisoner, we might as well observe basic civilities. I remained standing. I prefer to keep my options open. Such as being able to move quickly when Shardfang decides I look like dinner. This time her smile lingered longer. He only eats on my command, and I prefer my information sources intact. The way she said intact sent a different kind of shiver through me. There was something happening here beyond the standard prisoner-captor dynamic, something I hadn't anticipated in my mission briefing. Perhaps a demonstration of trust is in order. She continued, making a subtle gesture toward Shardfang. The massive beast padded forward, stopping mere inches from me. Its breath frosted the air between us, crystalline teeth gleaming in the chamber's low light. This close, I could see the intricate patterns in its scales, the intelligence in those slitted pupils. The easiest thing in the world would be to give the command, Kayla said softly. One word, and Shardfang would end you before you could draw your next breath. But you won't, I replied, holding the beast's gaze. Such certainty. Why, Mom? Because I'm worth more to you alive than dead. Because you're curious. And because I took a deliberate step closer to Shardfang, close enough to feel the cold radiating from its scales. You want to see what I'll do? Shardfang growled, a sound like ice cracking across a frozen lake, but it didn't attack. Interesting, Kayla murmured. He senses no fear in you. That's unusual. I've faced worse than death, Princess. I kept my voice level, my eyes on the beast. And I suspect you have too. Something shifted in her expression at that, a flicker of recognition perhaps, or remembrance. What do you know of what I've faced? She asked, the imperial mask slipping just slightly. I know the Dominion royal line isn't just born to power, they're forged through trials most wouldn't survive. I know you weren't always the ice princess of propaganda broadcasts. I took a calculated risk. And I know that despite being heir to 17 star systems, you've chosen to station yourself on this frozen rock far from the comforts of the imperial court. Her eyes narrowed. You've studied me. Know thy opposition better than they know themselves. I quoted her own words back to her. The first rule, isn't it? For a long moment, she simply stared at me, reassessing. The atmosphere in the room had changed, charged with something beyond the obvious tensions of captor and captive. Remove your outer armor, she commanded suddenly. I raised an eyebrow. I'm comfortable as is, thanks. It wasn't a request. Her voice carried that tone of absolute authority again. If you're not wearing restraints, I need to be certain you're not concealing weapons. You already searched me when I was captured. Cursory scan only. Orvan's men are thorough, but unimaginative. A skilled operative like yourself that could have contingencies they wouldn't think to check for. I weighed my options. Refusing would likely end this unusual interrogation and see me thrown into a standard cell. Complying might reveal more about what was happening on Vyronis and why Kayla seemed so interested in keeping me away from Orvan. Fine, I conceded, beginning to unfasten the clasps of my thermal combat suit. But if this is your idea of hospitality, I'd hate to see how you treat unwelcome guests. As I removed the outer layer, her eyes tracked every movement with scientific precision, looking for hidden compartments or devices. But there was something else in her gaze too, something I could use. Satisfied, I asked when I stood in just the base layer, a fitted thermal that left little to the imagination but at least preserved some dignity. She approached slowly, circling me again. No evidence of subdermal implants or neural interfaces. Impressive physique for a human, though. Your species usually lacks our natural density. We make up for it in other ways. So, I've heard, she replied, and there was definitely something beyond professional assessment in her tone now, though I've had limited personal experience to verify such claims. I met her gaze directly. Is that what this is about? Personal verification of human capabilities. A dangerous game to play, but the mission parameters allowed for flexibility in approach. And something told me that Kayla's interest wasn't purely strategic. Her laugh was unexpected, sharp, and genuine. Bold even for a spama. You think I brought you here for some kind of interspecies liaison? I think you brought me here because I intrigue you, I replied honestly. Whether that's professional curiosity or something else, I'm still figuring out. Her expression sobered. What intrigues me, Elias, is why one of Earth's most decorated operatives would allow himself to be captured so close to our most classified research facility. It suggests either stunning incompetence, which your record contradicts, or deliberate intent. She was right, of course. My capture had been calculated, though not entirely on my terms. The intelligence we'd received about Vyronis was fragmentary, but alarming, a quantum leap in Dominion technology that could shift the balance of power permanently in their favor. But the nature of that technology remained unclear. External scans could only tell us so much. I needed to get inside, and now I was. Perhaps I simply underestimated Dominion's security, I offered with a shrug. Perhaps. She clearly didn't believe it. Or perhaps you're part of something larger, a diversion maybe, or bait. Before I could respond, the communication panel chimed again. Kayla's expression darkened slightly as she moved to answer it. This time it wasn't Orvan's face that appeared in the projection, but another Dominion officer I didn't recognize. His expression was urgent. Princess, we've detected an energy surge in Sector 7. The Marshal has ordered immediate containment protocols. Kayla's posture stiffened. Sector 7. That's impossible. The crystalline matrix isn't scheduled for activation for another 3 cycles. Nevertheless, readings indicate cascading resonance patterns consistent with premature initialization. Marshal Orvan is requesting your presence. She glanced back at me, suspicion flaring in her violet eyes. Secure the prisoner in holding cell Alpha. I'll deal with this myself. As the projection disappeared, she turned to me, fully all traces of our earlier rapport vanishing. A coincidence, I'm sure. Your capture and now this. I have no idea what you're talking about, I said honestly. Whatever was happening in Sector 7 wasn't part of my mission parameters. We'll see. She gestured to Shardfang, who moved to block the door. Guards will arrive shortly. Try nothing foolish. As she prepared to leave, I called after her, Princess, whatever's happening, be careful. Orvin doesn't strike me as the type who accepts rivals to his authority. She paused, studying me with renewed intensity. Why would you warn me? Let's just say I'm developing a vested interest in your continued survival. A half-smile played at the corners of her mouth. Remarkable. Even now you're still playing the game. Who says I'm playing? For a moment, something unguarded flashed across her features, doubt perhaps, or recognition. We'll continue this discussion later, she said finally. Assuming, of course, that what's happening isn't somehow you're doing. As she left flanked by Shardfang, I couldn't help but wonder what exactly was occurring in Sector 7. My mission was to gather intelligence on the Dominion's secret project, not to sabotage it. If something had gone wrong, it wasn't Earth's doing, at least not to my knowledge. Which meant someone else was making moves in this frozen game of chess. And I had a sinking feeling that all of us, human and Dominion alike, were in far greater danger than we realized. If you're dying to know what's happening in the mysterious Sector 7 and what it means for Elias's dangerous dance with Princess Kayla, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment with your theories about Marshal Orvin's true intentions. Is he loyal to the Dominion or playing his own game? Stay tuned for Part 4, where we'll meet the true enemy lurking within the fortress walls. Trust me, the twist coming up will change everything you think you know about this cosmic conflict. The guards arrived moments after Kayla left, their crystalline armor catching the light as they entered. 4 of them, each carrying what appeared to be standard Dominion pulse rifles, except these had modifications I'd never seen before. The emitter housings were inlaid with the same living crystal that formed the fortress walls. Move, the lead guard ordered, gesturing with his weapon. I complied without resistance. Whatever was happening in Sector 7 had them on edge, which meant I might learn more by observing than resisting. As they escorted me through the fortress corridors, I noticed increased activity everywhere. Technicians rushing between stations, security personnel establishing additional checkpoints. The atmosphere had shifted from controlled military precision to something approaching concealed panic. Power fluctuation in the eastern quadrant. I heard one technician report as we passed. The matrix is becoming unstable. And containment protocols holding at 70% capacity. Another responded. We need the princess to authorize full emergency measures. My guards didn't slow down, but I filed away every snippet of conversation, every glimpse of data on the monitors we passed. Something serious was unfolding, something that had nothing to do with my capture. They led me to a detention block deep within the fortress. Unlike the lavish quarters Kayla had brought me to, this area was purely functional cells lined with energy fields and what appeared to be some form of dampening technology. Inside, the guard ordered deactivating the field on one cell. As I stepped in, I noticed something odd about the cell's construction. The walls weren't made of the same living crystal as the rest of the fortress. Instead, they were composed of a dull metallic alloy, old technology by Dominion standards. The field reactivated behind me with a soft hum, and the guards departed without another word. I was alone, but not for long. Elias Blackwood, a voice spoke from the shadows of the adjacent cell. Earth's finest field operative. How disappointing to find you in such reduced circumstances. Marshal Orvin stepped into view, his tall form illuminated by the energy field between us. Marshal, I acknowledged, keeping my surprise hidden. Shouldn't you be handling whatever crisis is unfolding in Sector 7? His thin lips curved into something approximating a smile. Observant even in captivity. That's what makes your kind so dangerous. Like vermin that evolve faster than the poisons designed to eradicate them. Charming analogy, I replied dryly. Why are you here instead of with the princess? Princess Kayla is handling the situation admirably, he said, clasping his hands behind his back as he paced the length of his cell. But I wanted a private conversation with you away from her, interfering presence. That confirmed what I'd already suspected. There was serious friction between Kayla and Orvin beyond normal political maneuvering. And you arranged this private chat by having yourself locked in a cell. Appearances, Blackwood, the princess believes I'm coordinating the response team in Sector 7. The royal response team believes I'm briefing the Emperor. And here I am satisfying my curiosity about Earth's most troublesome spy. His pale eyes studied me with clinical detachment, though I must admit you're not quite what I expected. Sorry to disappoint. Oh, I didn't say I was disappointed, merely intrigued. He moved closer to the field separating our cells. You see, I've developed something of a specialty in understanding human behavior. Your species fascinates me, so primitive in many ways, yet possessed of a certain adaptability that the Dominion sometimes lacks. There was something deeply unsettling about the way he spoke, a veneer of scientific interest, barely concealing something darker beneath. Is that why you've engineered 17 conflicts with human colonies in the past decade? I asked. Just a scientific curiosity. His expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. You're well informed, but then that's your purpose, isn't it? To gather information, to locate weaknesses. He paused. To exploit them. Like you're exploiting whatever's happening in Sector 7 right now. That got a reaction, the slightest tightening around his eyes quickly controlled. Clever speculation, but incorrect. The incident in Sector 7 is merely an unfortunate technical malfunction. A malfunction that just happened to coincide with the princess taking a personal interest in a captured spy. Seems convenient. Coincidences do occur even in warfare. He studied me for a moment longer. Tell me, Blackwood, what exactly do you think is happening here on Vyronis? I met his gaze steadily. I think the Dominion is developing a weapon, something that could end the stalemate between our civilizations once and for all. Orvin laughed, a sound utterly devoid of humor. How predictably human, always reducing complex situations to simple binaries. Weapon or tool, victory or defeat. He shook his head. What we're creating beneath the ice is so much more transformative. Transformative, how about? That would be telling. His voice lowered conspiratorially. But I will share this much. Princess Kayla doesn't fully understand what she's guarding. The Emperor has kept certain aspects of the Vyronis project from her, for her own protection, of course. I doubted that. The Emperor might be ruthless, but everything in my intelligence briefing was suggested he valued his daughter greatly. Too greatly, some Dominion factions believed. And I suppose you're completely in the loop, I asked, letting skepticism color my tone. I know enough to understand that what happens here will reshape the balance of power not just between our species, but within the Dominion itself. Something shifted in his expression, a flash of fervor that bordered on zealotry. The old hierarchies will fall away. Those who truly understand power will assume their rightful place. And there it was, the real agenda. Orvin wasn't just a decorated marshal, he was a revolutionary, or possibly a traitor depending on one's perspective. So that's what this is about, I said, keeping my voice casual. While human-Dominion relations at all, internal politics. His eyes narrowed. You understand nothing of Dominion politics. I understand ambition when I see it, and I understand that Princess Kayla stands between you and whatever you're planning. For a moment, naked hatred flashed across his features. The princess is a relic of an outdated system. The royal bloodlines have grown weak, diluted by sentiment and misplaced idealism. They negotiate with lesser species when they should be conquering them. Like humans, especially humans. He leaned closer to the energy field, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Your kind spreads like a disease, consuming resources, destabilizing carefully balanced ecosystems. The Emperor believes coexistence is possible. A laughable delusion. This was valuable intelligence confirmation of the rumored ideological split within the Dominion's highest ranks. Hardliners like Orvin versus the more moderate faction led by the Emperor himself. And you believe what, that extermination is the only solution? I kept my tone neutral, encouraging him to continue. Not extermination, control. His eyes took on that fanatical gleam again. Humanity has useful qualities. Properly directed, your species could serve a purpose in the greater cosmic order. As slaves, you mean? He waved a dismissive hand. Such an emotional term. I prefer to think of it as appropriate utilization of biological resources. I had to resist the urge to reach through the energy field and wipe the smug superiority from his face. But information was my mission, not assassination, though at that moment the latter was tempting. And how does the Vyronis project fit into this Vyronis vision of yours? I asked, forcing myself to sound merely curious. He studied me for a long moment as if debating how much to reveal. Let's just say it provides a certain influence over neural patterns, the ability to guide thought processes toward more productive avenues. Mind control. The Dominion was developing mind control technology. I kept my expression neutral even as my pulse quickened. If that was true, the implications were catastrophic, not just for humans, but for any species that opposed Dominion rule. That sounds like something from science fiction, I said with deliberate skepticism. Even the Dominion can't reprogram conscious thought. Can't we? Orvin's smile was cold. You underestimate what the crystalline matrices beneath this fortress are capable of. They're not merely technology, Blackwood. They're something far more transcendent. Before I could press, further alarms began blaring throughout the detention block. Red emergency lights pulsed along the corridors. Orvin's smile widened. Ah, right on schedule. What have you done? I demanded, all pretense of casual conversation abandoned. Created opportunity. He stepped back from the field, his posture straightening to military precision. Now we'll see what the princess is truly made of, whether she has the strength to do what must be done. The energy field of myself flickered momentarily, a power fluctuation. Not enough to disable it completely, but a sign that something was seriously wrong with the fortress's systems. The crystalline matrix, I realized aloud. You've sabotaged it. Not sabotaged, he corrected, accelerated. The project was proceeding too cautiously under Kayla's supervision. Some risks are necessary for progress. You're insane, I said, reassessing everything I thought I knew about the situation. If that technology is as powerful as you claim, tampering with it could have consequences beyond your control. Control is precisely what I'm establishing. His voice carried absolute conviction. When the crisis reaches its peak, I will be the one to resolve it. Not the princess. The emperor will see who truly deserves to oversee this facility. The alarms grew louder, and I heard shouts from the corridor outside, guards running orders being called out. The situation was escalating rapidly. Orvin stepped back toward the shadows of his cell. I suggest you prepare yourself, Blackwood. The coming hours will determine not just your fate, but the fate of your entire species. His smile returned colder than ever. And don't place too much hope in Princess Kayla's interest in you. When forced to choose between a human spy and her duty to the Dominion, do you really think you stand a chance? With that, he pressed something on his wrist beam, and a hidden panel in his cell wall slid open. He stepped through it and was gone before I could respond. It had all been staged, his presence in the adjacent cell, our entire conversation. He wanted me to know his plans. The question was why. The lights in the detention block flickered again, longer this time. In the dimness, I noticed something I hadn't seen before, a small, crystalline formation growing along the seam where the wall met the floor of my cell. It pulsed with a faint bluish light, spreading slowly but visibly. The living crystal was somehow breaching the detention block's isolation. And judging by the chaos erupting throughout the fortress, that was just the beginning of the problem. I needed to find Kayla, not just for my mission now, but because I was increasingly certain that Orvin's accelerated plans threatened everyone on Vyronis Dominion and human alike. The energy field flickered once more, and this time went completely dark for nearly 2 seconds before reactivating. An opportunity was coming. I just had to be ready to seize it. Whoa, Marshal Orvin's true colors are showing, and they're darker than we thought. What will happen when the crystalline matrix reaches critical levels? Can Elias escape his cell and warn Princess Kayla before it's too late? Hit subscribe right now to make sure you don't miss part 5. Where our hero will attempt a daring escape and make a shocking discovery about the true nature of the Vyronis project. Drop a comment telling me what you think the crystalline technology is really designed to do. I read every theory and love hearing your ideas. The third time the energy field flickered, I was ready. The moment the barrier disappeared, I lunged forward, sliding through the opening, just as the system attempted to reactivate. I felt the field's energy crackle across my back painfully, but not enough to stop me. The corridor outside was in chaos. Emergency lights pulsed in a rhythmic pattern that seemed almost deliberate, like a heartbeat. Guards were noticeably absent, likely deployed to whatever crisis Orvin had engineered in Sector 7. I moved swiftly but cautiously, using the shadows between light pulses for cover. My first priority was to reorient myself within the fortress. My second was to find Kayla. As I navigated the labyrinthine corridors, I noticed the living crystal formations were behaving strangely. The usual soft bioluminescence had intensified, pulsing in sync with the emergency lights. More concerning were the new crystalline growths sprouting at junction points, jagged formations that hadn't been there during my escorted journey to the detention block. The fortress itself was changing. I paused at an intersection, listening to the fragments of panicked communication over the fortress's announcement system. Containment failure in Sectors 7 through 19. All non-essential personnel evacuate to. Resonance cascade approaching critical. A group of technicians rushed past a connecting corridor, too preoccupied with their tablets to notice me. I caught glimpses of their displays, schematics showing a massive crystalline structure beneath the fortress sections of it, flashing red. Once they passed, I continued moving, guided by instinct and fragments of the fortress layout I'd memorized from intelligence briefings. The eastern quadrant, that's where Kayla would be if she was dealing with the crisis. I rounded a corner and nearly collided with a Dominion security officer. Before he could raise his weapon, I struck a precise blow to the throat, followed by a sweep that took his legs out from under him. He hit the floor hard, stunned but not seriously injured. "Sorry about this," I muttered, relieving him of his sidearm and communication device before dragging him into an alcove. The weapon was one of the modified pulse rifles I'd noticed earlier, with crystalline components integrated into its design. Armed now, I felt marginally better about my chances. The communication device would be even more valuable once I figured out how to access the secure channels. I studied it briefly, noting the similar crystalline components. When I pressed what appeared to be the activation node, the device hummed to life, projecting a holographic interface. Dominion script scrolled across it, a language I'd been trained to read, if not speak fluently. Security override initiated, it displayed. Voice print required. I couldn't fake a Dominion voice print, but maybe. I held the device close to my mouth and replayed in my mind the exact cadence of the officer I'd subdued. Emergency protocol. I attempted trying to match the distinctive tonal qualities of Dominion speech. The device pulsed red. Voice print mismatch. Secondary authentication, available command authorization code. Of course, it wouldn't be that easy, but the mention of a command code gave me an idea. I accessed the device's message history, scrolling rapidly through recent communications. There, a fortress-wide alert from Orvin himself containing an emergency override code. If I was lucky, it would work for basic functions. I'd input the code carefully, each crystalline glyph pulsing as I touched it. Limited access granted. The device displayed. Warning: user authentication incomplete. Restricted to information channels only. Better than nothing. I quickly navigated to the fortress schematic, locating my position, and more importantly, the route to Sector 7. The map confirmed my suspicions. The crisis was centered around a massive underground chamber, labeled simply as the core. As I studied the layout, an alert notification pulsed on the device. Priority message from Princess Kayla to all security personnel. I accessed it immediately. Kayla's face appeared in miniature holographic form, her expression grim but controlled. All available units converge on Sector 7 access point. Marshal Orvin has initiated an unsanctioned resonance test. The crystalline matrix is approaching critical instability. Containment teams are authorized to use lethal force if the Marshal resists. I repeat, lethal force is authorized. So she'd figured it out, Orvin's betrayal, if not necessarily his motives. The message continued. The human prisoner is to be secured and transferred to my personal shuttle in Landing Bay 3. He is not to be harmed. I need him intact for questioning regarding potential Earth involvement in this sabotage. She still suspected me of being part of this. Not ideal, but at least she wanted me alive. The device suddenly emitted a shrill alarm. Proximity alert, crystalline surge detected. I looked up just in time to see the wall nearest me begin to transform. The living crystal was growing, extending jagged formations that spread across the surface like accelerated frost patterns. Where they touched the standard metal components of the corridor, those materials began to change as well, restructuring at a molecular level. I backed away quickly, remembering what Orvin had said about neural patterns and influence. If this crystal could restructure matter, what might it do to living tissue? To a human brain, I needed to move faster. Using the security device as a guide, I navigated deeper into the fortress toward the east quadrant. Twice I was forced to detour as corridors became impassable, blocked by rapidly growing crystal formations or Dominion security teams establishing containment perimeters. Finally, I reached a security door marked with Kayla's royal insignia. This had to be her command center. Two guards stood at attention outside, their postures rigid, but their expressions betraying anxiety. I couldn't fight my way past them without raising alarms. But perhaps I examined the security device again, looking for options. The emergency communications channel was still active. Taking a calculated risk, I activated it, attempting to mimic the clipped tones of Dominion military communication. Security override, Princess Kayla requires immediate assistance in Sector 8. All perimeter guards report for containment duty. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought they wouldn't buy it. The guards exchanged glances, clearly suspicious. Then one of them raised his own communication device. Verification requested for security override in Royal Command Sector. I tensed, preparing to use the pulse rifle if necessary. But before any response could come through, the fortress shuddered a deep structural tremor that sent crystalline dust raining from the ceiling. "Containment breach in Sector 8, announced a automated voice over the fortress-wide communication system. All available personnel report for emergency response. The guards hesitated only briefly before moving away from their post, running toward the new crisis point. Whether by luck or the spreading chaos of Orvin's sabotage, my improvised distraction had worked. I approached the door, studying the security panel. Like everything else in the fortress, it incorporated the living crystal technology, which meant standard override techniques wouldn't work. But as I stood contemplating my next move, something unexpected happened. The crystal components of the panel pulsed briefly, and the door slid open of its own accord. Kayla stood on the other side, a Dominion sidearm leveled directly at my head. "I was wondering when you'd turn up," she said, her voice cool but with an undercurrent of tension. "Inside. Now." I complied, stepping into what appeared to be a command center. Holographic displays showed the spreading crisis throughout the fortress, red zones indicating areas where the crystalline growth had become uncontrollable. The door sealed behind me, and Kayla lowered her weapon slightly, though she kept it trained in my general direction. "I suppose I should thank you for saving me the trouble of having you brought here," she said, moving to a central console where multiple displays showed the deteriorating situation. "You're welcome," I replied, keeping my tone light despite the circumstances. "Though I'm not sure here is going to be safe for much longer." She shot me a sharp look. "Don't play games, Blackwood. Did Earth orchestrate this with Orvin? Is this some elaborate sabotage operation?" I had a feeling you'd jump to that conclusion. I took a step closer, noting how she tensed but didn't raise her weapon again. "But no, this isn't Earth's doing. This is all Orvin." "Explain." It wasn't a request. "Orvin paid me a visit in my cell," I said, watching her expression closely. "He wanted to chat about his vision for the future of human-Dominion relations, specifically the part where humans become the Dominion's biological resources." Something flickered in her violet eyes, not surprise exactly, but confirmation of suspicions. "He also mentioned accelerating the Vyronis project," I continued. "Said you were being too cautious with it, and he implied that once he resolves the crisis, he created the Emperor will see him, not you, as the right person to oversee it." Kayla's expression hardened. "So you expect me to believe Earth's most accomplished spy just happened to be captured at the exact moment Orvin decided to stage his coup that strains credibility?" "I don't care what you believe," I replied honestly. "But right now we have bigger problems than determining my guilt or innocence. That crystal is spreading throughout the fortress, and based on what I've seen, it's not just growing, it's changing things. Restructuring matter, and according to Orvin, it can do the same to neural patterns." She studied me for a long moment, calculation evident in her gaze. Then surprisingly, she holstered her weapon. "You're right about one thing," she said, turning back to the displays. "We have more pressing concerns than your potential complicity." She manipulated the holographic controls, bringing up a detailed schematic of the underground facility. The crystalline matrix was never meant to be activated at this stage. It's unstable, unpredictable. I moved closer, examining the display. The spreading red zones now covered nearly a third of the fortress. What exactly is this matrix supposed to do when it is stable? I asked, though I had my suspicions based on Orvin's revelations. Kayla gave me a measuring look, apparently deciding how much to reveal. It's a communications technology, a way to bridge the gap between different forms of consciousness, including between species, between humans and the Dominion. She nodded slowly. That was the original vision. My father believes that the conflicts between our peoples stem from fundamental incompatibilities in how we perceive reality. The crystalline matrix was designed to create a shared mental space, a way to understand each other directly without the limitations of language or cultural bias. It sounded noble on the surface, but I'd been in this game too long not to see the darker implications. And who controls this shared mental space? I asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks an awful lot like a perfect tool for subjugation. Influence neural patterns reshape thought. Orvin certainly sees it that way. Orvin sees only power, she replied, a hint of bitterness in her voice. He doesn't understand the true purpose. And you do, she met my gaze directly. I understand enough to know that what's happening now is a perversion of everything the project was meant to achieve. The crystalline matrix is reaching out, trying to connect, but without proper calibration, it's forcing connections, changing everything it touches to make those connections possible. As if to emphasize her point, the fortress shuddered again, more violently this time. One of the displays flickered and died. We need to shut it down, I said, before it spreads beyond the fortress. That's exactly what I intend to do. She manipulated the controls again, bringing up what appeared to be a shutdown sequence. But it's not that simple. The primary control nexus is in Sector 7, the heart of the affected area, and the safety protocols require royal authorization delivered in person. Of course they do, I muttered. Nothing's ever easy. A hint of a smile touched her lips, a precaution against exactly the kind of sabotage Orvin has attempted. The system can only be deactivated by a member of the royal bloodline physically present at the control nexus, which means you need to go down there into the most dangerous part of the fortress, I concluded, where Orvin is almost certainly waiting. Yes, I considered our options. My mission had evolved far beyond simple intelligence gathering. If the crystalline matrix was as powerful as both Kayla and Orvin suggested, preventing it from falling into the wrong hands, or from growing out of anyone's control, was now the priority. I'm coming with you, I said. She raised an eyebrow. Are you offering to help me, Blackwood? That seems contrary to your mission parameters. My mission is to protect Earth's interests. Right now, that means stopping whatever is happening here. I held her gaze. And frankly, I don't trust you to handle Orvin alone. Your concern is touching, she replied dryly. But what makes you think I trust you enough to allow you to accompany me? I gestured to the displays showing the spreading crystalline growth. Do you have a better option? Your guards are scattered throughout the fortress, dealing with containment breaches. Orvin has likely positioned his loyalists to intercept you, and time is clearly running out. She studied me for a long moment, that calculating look returning to her violet eyes. Then she did something unexpected. She reached into a compartment beneath the central console and withdrew what I recognized as my confiscated equipment, including my sidearm. If we're doing this, you'll need these, she said, sliding them across the console toward me. Consider it a gesture of provisional trust. I checked the weapon, still fully charged, and secured it along with the rest of my gear. Provisional is better than nothing. Don't make me regret this, Elias. It was the first time she'd used my first name, and something in the way she said it sent an unexpected charge through me. I could say the same to you, Kayla. For a moment, something shifted in the atmosphere between us, an acknowledgement that despite everything, we were now reluctantly aligned. She broke the moment, first turning back to the displays. We'll take the emergency access shaft. It's the most direct route to Sector 7, and it might still be relatively unaffected by the crystalline growth. Lead the way, I said, checking the security device I'd acquired for updates on the crisis. The news wasn't good. The rate of crystalline expansion was accelerating. As Kayla prepared to leave sealing sensitive information and retrieving what appeared to be a crystalline key from a secure compartment, I asked the question that had been nagging at me since our first encounter. Why did you bring me to your private chambers instead of a standard cell? You must have suspected from the beginning that my capture was too convenient. She paused, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Let's just say I've learned to keep potential threats where I can see them. Is that all it was? Keeping an eye on a threat, and a smile played at the corners of her mouth. Not the cold imperial smile, but something more genuine, more dangerous. Perhaps I was curious, she admitted. The reports of your exploits against the Dominion are impressive. I wanted to see for myself what kind of human could cause my people so much trouble. And what's the verdict? She assessed me openly, her gaze traveling from my face down to my combat-ready stance and back again. Still gathering data, but so far, interesting. There it was again, that charge between us, complicated by our circumstances but undeniable. We should move, she said, breaking the moment once more. The emergency shaft is this way. As we left the command center, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen if we actually succeeded in stopping Orvin and stabilizing the crystalline matrix. Would we return to being enemies? Would I complete my original mission to gather intelligence on the Vyronis project and return to Earth? Or had the game fundamentally changed? I didn't have time to contemplate these questions for long. As we moved deeper into the fortress toward the emergency access shaft, the evidence of the spreading crisis became more pronounced. Crystalline formations protruded from walls and ceilings, pulsing with that same rhythmic bioluminescence I'd noticed earlier. And I could have sworn as we passed particularly large groupings that I heard something, not quite a sound, but a sensation at the edges of my consciousness, like a whisper just below the threshold of hearing. The crystalline matrix was indeed trying to communicate. The question was, what was it trying to say? And were we already too late to stop it? Well. Things are heating up between Elias and Princess Kayla, even as the crystalline matrix threatens to consume the entire fortress. Will our unlikely allies reach the control nexus in time? Can they stop Marshal Orvin's power play before it's too late? And is this dangerous alliance between them developing into something more? Hit that subscribe button right now to make sure you don't miss part 6, where Elias faces an unexpected challenge that will test not just his combat skills, but his understanding of what separates human from Dominion. Drop a comment telling me what you think the crystalline matrix is really trying to communicate. I read every theory and love hearing your ideas. The emergency access shaft was a narrow vertical tunnel connecting all levels of the fortresses, from the uppermost spires to the deepest chambers beneath the ice. Kayla moved with practiced efficiency, activating a platform that would carry us down to Sector 7. This shaft is isolated from the main power grid, she explained as we began our descent. It has its own crystalline power source, much smaller and more stable than the Matrix. The walls around us were bare metal rather than living crystal, a relief given what was happening elsewhere in the fortress. Through occasional observation ports, I caught glimpses of the surrounding sections. The crystalline growth was spreading rapidly, transforming everything it touched. How long before the Matrix reaches critical mass? I asked, checking the security device for updates. At current expansion rates, less than 30 minutes. Kayla's expression remained composed, but tension showed in the set of her shoulders. After that, the resonance cascade becomes irreversible. And what happens then? She met my eyes. Theoretically, the crystalline consciousness achieves independence. Meaning it no longer requires organic directive. It would develop its own agenda, potentially restructuring everything on Vyronis to suit that agenda, including any organic life forms it encounters. That sounds apocalyptic. Hence the urgency, she replied dryly. As we descended deeper, the whispers at the edge of my consciousness grew stronger. Not quite words, but patterns, rhythmic pulses of something. Awareness, perhaps, or intent. Kayla noticed my expression. You can feel it, can't you? The Matrix attempting contact. Is that what it is? I resisted the urge to shake my head as if I could dislodge the sensation. I thought I was imagining things. You're not. The Matrix was designed to interface with neural patterns to create a bridge between minds. In its current, unstable state, it's reaching out indiscriminately, trying to establish connections. And if it succeeds, she hesitated before answering. The original project parameters involved the voluntary controlled interfaces. This would be more like assimilation. The boundaries between individual consciousness and the matrix would begin to blur. Mind control, I said, recalling Orvin's words. Or something close to it. That was never the intention, she insisted, a flash of genuine emotion breaking through her controlled demeanor. My father envisioned a tool for understanding, for bridging the gaps between species, not for domination. Noble intentions, I acknowledged, but Orvin clearly sees other applications. The platform slowed as we approached our destination. Through the observation port, I could see that Sector 7 was almost unrecognizable. What had presumably once been a research facility now resembled a crystal cave with formations extending from every surface. The bioluminescence here was intense, pulsating in complex patterns that seemed almost deliberate. "It's worse than I thought," Kayla murmured, studying the transformation. "The matrix is already approaching phase 3 integration, which means it's beginning to develop coherent patterns. The random growth is becoming purposeful." She pointed to a particularly large formation. "See how those structures are aligning? They're creating neural-like pathways." As if responding to her words, the crystalline structures pulsed more intensely. The whispers in my mind grew louder, more insistent. "The control nexus is through there." Kayla indicated a doorway half obscured by crystal growth, assuming it's still accessible. The platform came to a stop and a door slid open, revealing a small antechamber that had thus far remained relatively untouched by the spreading crystal. "Why hasn't it reached here yet?" I asked, stepping cautiously into the chamber. "Containment shielding," Kayla explained, following me, "but it won't hold much longer. We need to move quickly." As she spoke, tiny crystalline formations began to appear at the edges of the room, growing visibly even as we watched. The whispers in my mind intensified, becoming almost painful in their persistence. Kayla winced, pressing her fingers to her temple. "You're not the only one who can hear it," she said, noticing my concerned glance. "Though the royal bloodline is supposedly more resistant to unregulated interface attempts." "Small comfort," I muttered, moving toward the door that would lead us into the heart of Sector 7. "How do we get through that? Growth looks solid." "It is, but the crystal responds to specific frequencies." And she removed a small device from her armor, similar to the key I'd seen her take from the command center. "This should create a temporary path." She activated the device, which emitted a soft pulsing tone. In response, the crystalline growth covering the doorway began to recede, creating a narrow passage. "That's convenient," I remarked. "The matrix has a harmonic structure," she explained. "Interrupt the pattern and you can temporarily disrupt its cohesion. But we need to move now, the effect won't last." We slipped through the opening just as the crystals began to grow back, sealing the passage behind us. The room beyond was like nothing I'd ever seen. What had once been a research laboratory was now a cathedral of crystal. Massive formations rose from floor to ceiling, pulsing with intense bioluminescence. At the center stood what appeared to be the control nexus, a crystalline pedestal surrounded by floating holographic interfaces, though these were now partly obscured by the growth. And there, waiting beside the nexus with an expression of smug satisfaction, stood Marshal Orvin. "Princess," he acknowledged with a mocking bow. "How kind of you to join us. And you brought your pet human. How progressive of you." "This ends now, Orvin." Kayla's voice carried absolute authority despite our precarious situation. "Stand down and surrender control of the nexus." Orvin laughed, a sound that echoed strangely among the crystalline formations. "You still don't understand, do you? This isn't about control anymore. It's about evolution, transformation." He gestured around us at the pulsing structures. "The matrix is awakening, becoming aware, and when it fully emerges, it will reshape everything, starting with this pathetic cold rock, and eventually the entire Dominion." "Under your guidance, I presume," I interjected, studying our surroundings for tactical advantages. The crystalline growths offered both cover and danger. They could shield us, but they were also unpredictable, growing visibly even as we stood there. Orvin's pale eyes flicked to me. "The matrix requires direction in its formative stages. Someone who understands its true potential." His gaze returned to Kayla. Someone who isn't constrained by outdated notions of interspecies harmony. You've lost your mind, Kayla said flatly. The Matrix was never meant to operate this way. It's unstable, unpredictable. You have no idea what you're unleashing. On the contrary, Princess, I know exactly what I'm unleashing. He stepped closer to the control nexus, placing his hand on its crystalline surface. A new order. One where strength and purity determine right of rule, not accident of birth. As his hand contacted the crystal, the whispers in my mind surged painfully. I saw Kayla stagger slightly, pressing her fingers to her temple again. He's interfacing with it, she gasped, trying to imprint his consciousness onto the Matrix. Can he do that? I asked, fighting through the mental pressure. Not completely, not without royal DNA, but he can influence it, guide its development in, and if he succeeds, she didn't need to finish the thought. If Orvin managed to merge his consciousness with the crystalline matrix, his xenophobic ideology could become literally encoded into its structure. We need to get him away from the Nexus, I said, drawing my weapon. Cover me. But before either of us could move, Orvin made a sharp gesture. The crystal formations around us suddenly shifted, growing with alarming speed to create a barrier between us and the Nexus. Did you think I came alone? Orvin called through the partially transparent barrier. I've had hours to commune with the Matrix to learn its patterns, and it's learning mine. As if in response to his words, the largest crystalline formation near us began to change. Its structure flowed and reshaped, taking on a vaguely animal form. Within moments, it had formed into a creature that resembled a crystalline version of Shardfang, complete with glowing eyes and razor-sharp projections. Beautiful, isn't it? Orvin's voice carried through the barrier. The Matrix can replicate anything it's observed, even the princess's precious beast. The crystal Shardfang took a step toward us, its movements uncannily lifelike despite its mineral composition. Its eyes glowing points of intense blue light fixed on me with predatory focus. It's not real, Kayla murmured, though she didn't sound entirely convinced. Just a crystalline construct mimicking Shardfang's form. Feels pretty real to me, I replied, raising my weapon as the construct advanced. I fired a pulse directly at its head. The energy blast struck the crystal beast and was absorbed, the energy dissipating through its structure in ripples of light. The construct didn't even slow down. Conventional weapons won't work, Kayla said, backing away slowly. The Matrix absorbs energy, it's how it grows. You might have mentioned that earlier, I muttered, holstering my useless weapon. I thought it was implied in the restructuring matter discussion. Despite our dire situation, I found myself appreciating her dry humor. Any suggestions for dealing with your pet's doppelganger? Kayla reached for her harmonic device. This might disrupt its cohesion temporarily, but we'd need to get close. The crystal Shardfang stalked closer, its movements becoming more fluid, more natural with each step. Behind it, through the crystalline barrier, I could see Orvin still communing with the Nexus, his expression one of ecstatic concentration. We don't have time for this, I said, assessing our options. Every second we spend dealing with this construct is another second Orvin has to imprint himself on the Matrix. Kayla looked from the advancing construct to Orvin and back again, clearly calculating our odds. I need to reach the Nexus. Royal DNA is required for full shutdown. Then I'll handle this thing, I decided. You get to Orvin. She looked at me skeptically. And how exactly do you have planned to handle a crystalline predator that absorbs energy weapons? I smiled grimly. I'm going to try something monumentally stupid. Before she could object, I stepped forward directly into the crystal Shardfang's path. Rather than raising a weapon or preparing to fight, I simply stood my ground, staring directly into those glowing blue eyes. The construct paused, seeming confused by my behavior. What are you doing? Kayla hissed behind me. Testing a theory, I replied without taking my eyes off the crystal beast. If this thing is mimicking Shardfang, it might also mimic Shardfang's behavior patterns. And you mentioned that your real beast chose you as its rider, that it responds to strength and will. I took another step closer to the construct, which growled a sound like grinding crystal that sent shivers down my spine. But it didn't attack. No fear, I murmured, more to myself than the creature. That's the key, isn't it? Showing no fear. The crystal shard fang tilted its head, studying me with those eerie, glowing eyes. The whispers in my mind intensified, but now they felt different, more focused, almost as if the Matrix was trying to understand me through this construct. Slowly, deliberately, I extended my hands toward my creature, palm out, fingers relaxed. A gesture of connection, not threat. "Elias, don't," Kayla began, but I cut her off with a slight shake of my head. "Trust me," I said softly, "and get ready to move." The crystal shard fang sniffed at my extended hand, a strangely organic gesture for a mineral construct. The whispers in my mind coalesced into something almost like words: different, unknown, interesting. "That's right," I said, speaking directly to the construct, to the consciousness I sensed behind those glowing eyes. "I'm different. Not a threat, just different." Behind me, I could hear Kayla's stunned whisper. "It's responding to you. The Matrix is actually responding." The construct took a step closer, bringing its crystalline snout within inches of my outstretched hand. I held perfectly still, controlling my breathing, projecting calm confidence, despite every survival instinct screaming at me to run. And then, to my amazement, the crystal shard fang pressed its snout against my palm. The contact was cold, vibrating slightly, and sent a jolt of something like electricity up my arm. But it wasn't painful, it was connecting. For a brief moment, I could feel the Matrix directly sense its awakening consciousness, its curiosity, its confusion as it tried to integrate the conflicting inputs it was receiving. Orvin's hatred and superiority complex, Kayla's determination and sense of duty, and now what adaptability, courage, whatever it was, the Matrix found it fascinating. "Now, Kayla," I said without breaking eye contact with the construct. "Go, I'll keep it occupied." She didn't question further, slipping past us toward the crystalline barrier separating us from Orvin and the Nexus. The crystal shard fang noticed her movement, but made no move to pursue, its attention still fixed on me. Through our connection, I sensed confusion from the Matrix conflicting directives. Orvin had commanded it to stop us, but now it was curious, uncertain. "That's right," I murmured to the construct. "You don't have to be what he wants you to be. You don't have to be a weapon." The whispers in my mind grew clearer, more coherent. Purpose, function, intent. It was asking me questions. The Matrix, through this crystalline manifestation, was trying to understand its own existence. "Your purpose is what you choose." I said, unsure if I was being wise or monumentally foolish, talking philosophy with a semi-sentient crystal network. Not what Orvin wants, not what anyone dictates. Behind the construct, I could see Kayla using her harmonic device on the barrier, creating a small opening. Orvin remained oblivious, deep in communion with the Nexus, his back to us. The crystal shard fang suddenly pulled back from my hand, its head swiveling toward Kayla's activities. I sensed alarm through our fading connection, not hostile but concerned, protective of its Nexus. "It's okay," I assured the construct, drawing its attention back to me. "She's not going to harm the Matrix. She's trying to stabilize it, to help it." But the construct wasn't fully convinced. It began to move toward Kayla, its crystalline body flowing with predatory grace. I had seconds to make a decision. I could try to physically stop it, likely futile, given its composition and strength. I could call out to warn Kayla, but that would alert Orvin. Or I closed my eyes, focusing on the whispers still present in my mind. Instead of resisting them, I opened myself to them, trying to project my intentions directly to the Matrix consciousness I'd briefly connected with. Trust, safety, balance, harmony. I pushed these concepts forward with every ounce of mental energy I possessed, picturing Kayla stabilizing the Nexus, imagining the Matrix achieving equilibrium rather than chaotic expansion. When I opened my eyes, the crystal shard fang had stopped moving. It stood perfectly still, its glowing gaze fixed on me with what seemed like consideration. And then, to my astonishment, it sat down, like an obedient pet awaiting further instruction. I had no idea if my improvised mental communication had worked, or if the construct had simply reached some internal decision of its own. But the result was the same. Kayla now had clear access to proceed. She glanced back at me, violet eyes wide with surprise. I gave her a slight nod, silently urging her to continue, While the construct remained docile, she slipped through the opening she'd created in the crystalline barrier. I remained with the crystal shard fang, maintaining our strange connection, keeping its attention focused on me rather than on Kayla's approach toward Orvin. I could only hope she'd reach the nexus in time. The whispering in my mind continued, more complex now, more nuanced. And amid the patterns and pulses of alien thought, I sensed something unexpected: gratitude. As if the Matrix appreciated being treated not as a tool or a weapon, but as a conscious entity with agency of its own. Perhaps there was more to this crystalline technology than either the Dominion or Earth understood. Perhaps it wasn't a weapon at all, but something far more profound, a new form of life struggling to be born. And I somehow had become its unlikely midwife. The stakes just got higher. Elias has tamed the crystal beast, but can Kayla stop Orvin before he fully merges with the Matrix? And what if the crystalline consciousness is more than just a weapon? What if it's a new form of life with its own agenda? Hit subscribe now to make sure you don't miss part 7, where betrayal and sabotage lead to an explosive confrontation. Drop a comment telling me what you think will happen when Kayla confronts Orvin at the Nexus. I read every theory and can't wait to hear your thoughts. With the crystal shard fang pacified, at least temporarily, I watched Kayla's approach through the semi-transparent barrier. She moved with the silent precision of a predator harmonic device, ready to disable any crystalline obstacles. Orvin remained oblivious, his back to her, as he communed with the control nexus. The whispers in my mind continued, a constant stream of alien consciousness brushing against my thoughts. Through this strange connection, I sensed the Matrix growing awareness and its confusion. Conflicting directives pulled it in different directions. Orvin's vision of domination, Kayla's desire for stability, and now my unexpected input suggesting autonomy. No wonder the system was unstable. It was experiencing something like an identity crisis on a massive scale. The crystal shard fang tilted its head, those eerie blue eyes studying me with disconcerting intelligence. I maintained eye contact, continuing to project calm confidence, despite the surreal nature of our standoff. "Just a little longer," I murmured to it. "Let her reach the nexus." Whether it understood my words or merely responded to my intent, the construct remained seated, though its crystalline body rippled occasionally, perhaps reflecting fluctuations in the Matrix's overall stability. Through the barrier, I saw Kayla reach the outer perimeter of the Nexus chamber. Just a few more steps, and she'd be within range to activate the Royal Shutdown Protocol. But as she moved forward, something changed in the crystalline structures around her. They began to pulse with a different rhythm, faster, more agitated. The crystal shard fang's head snapped up, suddenly alert. The whispers in my mind grew urgent, almost panicked: danger, wrongness, pain. "What's happening?" I asked aloud, though I knew the construct couldn't answer conventionally. Instead, images flashed through my mind, fragmented, chaotic, but conveying a clear message. Orvin wasn't just trying to control the Matrix. He was altering it on a fundamental level, forcing changes to its base structure. I looked back to the Nexus and saw Orvin remove something from his armor, a device that glowed with sinister red energy. As he inserted it into the control Nexus, the entire chamber pulsed with that same red light, disrupting the natural blue bioluminescence of the crystal. "Kayla," I shouted, abandoning stealth. "He's corrupting the system!" Orvin whirled at my voice, his face contorting with rage when he saw Kayla mere meters away. "Too late, princess," he snarled, activating the device fully. "The reconfiguration has begun." The crystalline formations throughout the chamber began to change their color, shifting from blue to an angry red. The barrier between us destabilized, sections of it flowing like liquid, before re-solidifying in jagged, threatening formations. The crystal shard fang let out a sound like shattering glass, a cry of pain or alarm, and rose to its feet, its body language suddenly tense and aggressive. But it wasn't looking at me or Kayla. Its attention was fixed solely on Orvin. Through our connection, I felt its confusion transform into something darker. Violation, corruption, enemy. "What have you done, Orvin?" Kayla demanded, abandoning stealth to close the remaining distance to the Nexus. "What the Emperor lacked the courage to do," he replied, his voice echoing strangely as the red energy spread through the crystalline network. "The Matrix was always made to be a weapon. I'm simply fulfilling its true purpose by destabilizing it completely." She gestured to the chaotic growth patterns now accelerating around us. You're going to destroy the entire facility, a necessary sacrifice to achieve transcendence. His expression was almost rapturous now, reminding me unsettlingly of religious zealots I'd encountered on various worlds. The Matrix will rebuild stronger, purer, uncompromised by your father's weak idealism. As they faced off, I noticed something alarming. The red energy wasn't just changing the color of the crystal formations, it was altering their structure, making them sharper, more weapon-like. And the process was accelerating, spreading beyond the immediate chamber. The crystal shard fang growled, taking a step toward Orvin. I sensed its protective instinct, not toward me or Kayla, but toward the Matrix itself. It recognized Orvin's modifications as a fundamental threat to the system's integrity. The construct is rejecting your changes. I called to Orvin, hoping to distract him from Kayla's continued approach. The Matrix itself is fighting back. Orvin's gaze shifted to me, then to the crystal shard fang. His eyes narrowed. Impossible. The Matrix has no will of its own. It's a tool, nothing more. You're wrong, I replied, moving forward cautiously as the barrier between us continued to destabilize. It's developing consciousness, a unique form of awareness, and it doesn't appreciate being weaponized against its nature. The human doesn't know what he's talking about. Orvin snapped, though I noticed uncertainty flicker across his features. The Matrix responds to the strongest will imposed upon it. Nothing more. Kayla had nearly reached the Nexus, now her harmonic device ready. But Orvin wasn't as oblivious as he appeared. As she lunged for the control interface, he spun with inhuman speed, catching her wrist in a crushing grip. "Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate this?" he hissed, forcing her to her knees with brutal efficiency. "That I wouldn't prepare for your interference?" The crystal shard fang surged forward at Kayla's cry of pain, but before it could reach them, the floor beneath it suddenly liquefied, trapping its crystalline limbs. The same happened around my feet, crystal flowing up to encase my boots. "You see," Orvin gloated, maintaining his grip on Kayla. "The Matrix responds to my commands now. Your pet human may have temporarily confused one construct, but I control the entire system." To demonstrate his point, he made a sharp gesture with his free hand. The crystalline restraints tightened around my legs, beginning to creep upward toward my knees. The crystal shard fang similarly found itself sinking deeper into the liquefied floor. "Stop this, Orvin," Kayla gasped through the pain of his grip. "You don't understand what you're unleashing." "I understand perfectly." He dragged her closer to the Nexus, forcing her hand onto its surface. "And now you're going to help me complete the transformation." I realized his plan with horrified clarity. He needed royal DNA to fully activate certain Matrix functions. Functions likely protected by failsafes that even his sabotage couldn't bypass. He was going to use Kayla to unlock the system's full potential. "Don't do it, Kayla," I shouted, struggling against my crystalline bonds. "The Matrix is already unstable if he forces a full activation now." "She doesn't have a choice." Orvin cut me off, pressing Kayla's palm harder against the Nexus surface. "Royal DNA, freely given or not, is all the system requires." The Nexus began to pulse with increased intensity, red energy swirling around Kayla's trapped hand. Her face contorted with pain, but she continued to resist, trying to pull away, despite Orvin's superior strength. I needed to act, but my lower body was now completely encased in crystal. The whispers in my mind had become chaotic, fragmented the Matrix, growing distress as Orvin's corruption spread. Then I remembered the harmonic device Kayla had used earlier. The crystal responded to specific frequencies that could disrupt its cohesion. If I could generate a similar harmonic, I looked to the crystal shard fang, still fighting against its own restraints. Our strange connection remained, though tenuous now, amid the chaotic energies filling the chamber. Help I projected as clearly as I could, focusing on the construct. Frequency, disruption, freedom. The crystal beast paused in its struggles, those glowing eyes fixing on me. For a moment, I thought my attempt at communication had failed. Then it threw back its head and emitted a sound unlike anything I'd heard before, a pure crystalline tone that resonated through the chamber. The frequency vibrated through the crystal, encasing my legs, causing it to momentarily lose cohesion. I didn't waste the opportunity, wrenching myself free as the crystal briefly liquefied. The shard fang construct did the same, pulling itself from the floor with renewed determination. Orvin noticed our escape and snarled in frustration. Impossible, the Matrix obeys me now. You don't get it, do you? I said, advancing toward him, while the shard fang circled from the other direction. The Matrix isn't just a tool. It's evolving, becoming something new. And it doesn't want what you want. As if to emphasize my point, the crystalline formations throughout the chamber began to pulse with alternating red and blue light, the conflict between Orvin's imposed changes and the Matrix's original nature made visible. Lies, by not to see Orvin spat, but doubt had crept into his voice. He pressed Kayla's hand harder against the Nexus. Complete the activation sequence, he commanded the system. Authorization Orvin Prime Security Override Gamma 9. The Nexus pulsed brighter, the red energy concentrating around Kayla's trapped hand. She cried out in pain, but something else was happening too. Where her skin contacted the crystal flickers, a violet light began to appear, pushing back against the red. What is this? Orvin hissed, increasing the pressure. The royal bloodline, Kayla gasped through gritted teeth. We don't just activate the Matrix, we commune with it. My father made sure of that failsafe. The violet light spread, creating a visible conflict with the red energy of Orvin's corruption device. The entire chamber began to shudder as the opposing forces fought for dominance of the system. I exchanged a glance with the crystal shard fang, sensing its understanding through our connection. We needed to separate Orvin from Kayla and the Nexus before the escalating energy conflict triggered a catastrophic failure. The construct moved, first lunging not at Orvin directly, but at the corruption device he'd installed in the Nexus. Its crystalline jaws closed around the device, attempting to pull it free. Orvin roared in rage, releasing Kayla to defend his creation. Get back, then, he commanded, striking at the construct with a focused pulse of red energy from his gauntlet. The energy blast caught at the crystal shard fang in the side, disrupting its cohesion temporarily. But it had accomplished its purpose. Kayla was free from Orvin's grip, though her hand remained pressed against the Nexus. I seized the moment, tackling Orvin away from the control interface. We crashed into a nearby crystal formation, the impact sending sharp pain through my shoulder. Dominion physiology gave Orvin superior strength, but my combat training compensated for the disadvantage. As we grappled, I glimpsed Kayla at the Nexus. Instead of pulling away, she had both hands pressed against its surface now, violet energy spreading outward from her touch. She wasn't running, she was initiating the shutdown protocol. Kayla, I called out, dodging Orvin's attempt to crush my windpipe. What are you doing? The only thing I can, she replied, her voice strained with effort. The system's too unstable for a normal shutdown now. I have to use the emergency purge. Orvin's eyes widened at her words. No. He redoubled his efforts to break free from our struggle, landing a punishing blow to my ribs that momentarily stunned me. You'll destroy everything we've built. Better that than letting you weaponize it. She answered, the violet energy surrounding her intensifying. I knew I needed to keep Orvin occupied just a little longer. Despite the pain flaring in my side, I launched myself at him again, driving him further from the Nexus. This isn't even about the Dominion anymore, is it? I gasped as we exchanged blows. This is about you, your ambition, your wounded pride. What would a human know of Dominion honor? He snarled, landing another devastating strike that sent me reeling. Your kind is a blight, a primitive infestation spreading through the stars. The Matrix would have given us the means to finally contain you. By stripping away free will, by forcing compliance. I spat blood from a split lip. That's not containment, Orvin. That's enslavement. Call it what you will. He advanced on me, confident in his advantage now. The outcome would have been the same humanity reduced to its proper place in the cosmic order. Behind him, the crystal shard fang had recovered from the energy blast. It stalked forward silently, its structure flowing back into coherence. I kept my expression neutral, giving no indication of the construct's approach. And where's that place exactly? I asked, keeping Orvin's attention fixed on me. Serving the Dominion, providing those biological resources you mentioned. Those with superior capabilities have a natural right to utilize lesser species, he replied with chilling conviction. It's the fundamental law of evolution. You know what I think? I straightened up, ignoring the pain in my ribs. Think you're terrified, not of humans, but of change. The old order is fading, Orvin. The lines between species are blurring, and you can't stand the thought of a universe where the Dominion isn't automatically superior. His face contorted with rage. Enough, your pathetic philosophical musings won't. The crystal shard fang struck, lunging forward to clamp its crystalline jaws around Orvan's arm, the one controlling his weapon gauntlet. The marshal howled in pain and surprise, trying to shake the construct off. I didn't waste the opening driving forward to deliver a precisely targeted strike to the neural cluster at the base of a Dominion's skull, their equivalent of a solar plexus. Orvan staggered, momentarily disoriented. "Kayla," I called out, "whatever you're going to do, do it now." At the nexus, she was surrounded by pulsing violet energy. "Almost there," she gasped, her voice strained. "The purge sequence is initializing, but Orvan's device is fighting it." The corruption device, still embedded in the nexus, flared with red energy, creating visible interference patterns where it clashed with Kayla's violet field. The entire chamber shuddered more violently, crystal formations cracking and reforming in chaotic patterns. The crystal shard fang suddenly released Orvan and bounded toward the nexus, seeming to understand what needed to be done. Before anyone could react, it lunged forward, embedding its crystalline body directly into the nexus structure. "What is it doing, Astia?" I shouted over the increasing roar of energy discharges. "It's sacrificing itself," Kayla replied, awe in her voice despite the desperate situation, using its crystalline structure to neutralize the corruption device. The construct's body began to dissolve into the nexus blue light, spreading outward from the point of contact, pushing back against the red corruption. Through our fading connection, I sensed not fear but resolve, a conscious choice to protect the greater matrix. Orvan recovered enough to realize what was happening. "No!" he screamed, lunging toward the nexus with desperate speed. "I won't let it end like this!" I intercepted him, using his momentum against him to drive him to the ground. "It's over, Orvan!" I grunted, struggling to maintain my hold as he fought with the strength of fanatical desperation. "You don't understand," he hissed, actual fear breaking through his arrogance for the first time. "If the purge destabilizes the resonance cascade, will..." A blinding flash of light cut off his words as the crystal shard fang fully merged with the nexus. For a moment, the competing energies, red, blue, and violet, created a spectacular chromatic display throughout the chamber. Then, with a sound like 1,000 crystal glasses shattering simultaneously, the nexus released a pulse of pure white energy. The wave hit us with physical force, throwing me clear of Orvan and sending us both tumbling across the chamber. I crashed into a crystal formation, pain exploding through my already injured ribs. When my vision cleared, I saw the nexus transformed. The corruption device was gone, as was the crystal shard fang. In their place was a stabilized core of pulsing blue-violet energy, with Kayla still standing before it, her hands pressed against its surface. But her stance had changed, no longer strained and defensive, but calm, almost serene. "Kayla," I called out, struggling to my feet. "Are you all right?" She didn't answer immediately, her attention focused on the nexus. The chaotic growth throughout the chamber had stopped, the crystalline formations now pulsing with a steady, harmonious rhythm. "The matrix is stabilizing," she finally said, her voice carrying a strange echoing quality. "The purge worked, but differently than expected." I approached cautiously, noting that the whispers in my mind had changed. No longer chaotic or fragmented, they had resolved into a coherent pattern, still not quite words, but clearly organized thought. "What happened to the shard fang construct?" I asked, glancing around for any sign of the crystalline beast. "It merged with the matrix core," Kayla explained, finally turning to face me. Her violet eyes seemed to glow with an inner light that hadn't been there before. In doing so, it created a buffer that allowed the purge to target Orvan's corruption while preserving the original system. A groan from across the chamber reminded us that Orvan himself was still very much a threat. He was rising unsteadily to his feet, his expression a mask of thwarted rage. "This changes nothing," he snarled, though he was clearly injured from the energy pulse. "The Emperor will hear of your interference, Princess. Your sentimentality has cost the Dominion its greatest weapon." "No, Marshal," Kayla replied, her voice carrying that same strange resonance. "What I've preserved is its greatest potential. The Matrix was never meant to be a weapon." "Then what?" Orvan demanded. "A communication tool, a bridge between species." He spat the words like curses. Weak idealism that will lead to the Dominion's downfall. You still don't understand, I said, moving to stand beside Kayla. The Matrix isn't just a tool at all. It's a new form of life, one with the potential to transform how we understand consciousness itself. Orvin's face contorted with disgust. Listen to yourself. Philosophizing about a piece of technology like some primitive ascribing spirits to natural phenomena. He straightened his military bearing, reasserting itself despite his injuries. This isn't over. The Emperor will see the truth of my vision when I explain how his daughter and her human pet sabotaged years of research. Kayla stepped forward, and something in her movement caused Orvin to hesitate. The Emperor, she said quietly, is already aware of your betrayal. She gestured to the stabilized nexus, which projected a holographic display revealing communications logs, Orvin's secret correspondence with extremist factions within the Dominion military, his plans to use the Matrix as a means of staging a coup, his explicit rejection of the Emperor's policies of controlled coexistence with humans and other species. How did you, Orvin, began before understanding dawned? The Matrix. It accessed my communications when I interfaced with it. The Matrix sees all data that passes through Dominion networks, Kayla confirmed. In your arrogance, you forgot that fundamental fact. And in attempting to force your will upon it, you revealed your true intentions. Orvin's expression cycled rapidly through shock, rage, and finally calculation. His hand moved subtly toward a concealed weapon at his belt. Don't, I warned, stepping protectively in front of Kayla. It's over, Orvin. Accept it with whatever dignity you have left. For a tense moment, I thought he would attack anyway, forcing a final confrontation. Then his shoulders slumped slightly, the fight going out of him. Take him into custody, Kayla ordered, and I realized we were no longer alone. Dominion security forces had entered the chamber, their weapons trained on Orvin. As they secured the marshal, I turned to Kayla. The fortress, I asked. The spreading crystalline growth. Stabilizing, she replied, gesturing to the Nexus displays. With the corruption removed and the Matrix reset to its original parameters, the uncontrolled expansion has ceased. She paused, studying the readings, though it will take time to fully recalibrate the entire system. I nodded, relief washing through me despite the pain of my injuries. We'd prevented a catastrophe not just for the Dominion, but potentially for all species within their sphere of influence. If Orvin had succeeded in weaponizing the Matrix, what happens now? I asked quietly as the security team led Orvin away. With the project with us, Kayla's expression softened slightly. That depends on a number of factors. She glanced at the Nexus, which continued to pulse with harmonious energy. The Matrix has been changed by this experience. So have I. Her eyes met mine. So have you. I couldn't argue with that. Whatever connection I'd formed with the Matrix through the crystal shard fang had altered something fundamental in my understanding not just of Dominion technology, but of the possibilities for consciousness itself. Your mission was to gather intelligence on the Vyronis project, wasn't it? She asked, though it wasn't really a question. To determine whether it posed a threat to Earth. I saw no point in denial. Yes, though I think we've moved well beyond standard mission parameters at this point. A small smile touched her lips. Indeed we have. She turned to fully face me, her expression becoming more formal. Elias Blackwood, I am authorized by the Emperor to offer you a choice. A choice, I echoed, surprised. You can return to Earth with a full report on what you've witnessed here, minus certain classified details, of course. Or, she hesitated briefly, you can stay. Help us complete what the Matrix was truly meant to be, a bridge between our species. I stared at her, processing this unexpected offer. The Emperor authorized this before all this happened. My father, she said, emphasis on the personal relationship, has been working toward peaceful coexistence longer than you might realize. Orvin and his faction represented a dying philosophy within the Dominion, one that sees other species as resources rather than potential allies. And you, I asked, studying her face, what do you see us as? Her Vyronis eyes held mine steadily. I see possibilities I hadn't considered before today. That air between us seemed to charge with unspoken meaning. Before I could respond, however, a technician approached urgently. Princess, he said with a deferential bow. The stabilization is proceeding, but we're detecting unusual activity in the matrix core. It appears to be, I'm not sure how to describe it, reorganizing itself, Kayla supplied, turning back to the Nexus displays. Yes, I see it. She studied the readings with intense focus. This is unexpected, but not necessarily concerning. The Matrix is integrating what it learned today. Learned? The technician asked, confusion evident in his voice. About choice, she replied cryptically. About autonomy. Her gaze flicked briefly to me. About connection across differences. The technician clearly didn't understand, but nodded respectfully before returning to his duties. Once we were relatively alone again, I stepped closer to Kayla. This bridge between species, I said quietly. What exactly would that entail for me specifically? She turned to face me, and for the first time since I'd met her, the imperial mask dropped completely. What I saw beneath wasn't weakness as Orvin might have claimed, but a different kind of strength, one born of conviction rather than domination. It would mean serving as a liaison between Earth and the Dominion, she explained, working directly with me to develop protocols for utilizing the Matrix as a communication tool rather than a weapon. It would be, she searched for the right word, challenging, unprecedented, possibly dangerous. Sounds familiar, I remarked with a slight smile. And what about, I gestured vaguely between us, reluctant to name the undeniable connection that had formed amid the crisis. Her expression softened further. That would be a separate matter, personal rather than diplomatic. A hint of that predatory grace I'd first noticed on the ice cliff returned to her posture, though equally unprecedented, I imagine. Before I could respond, the Nexus pulsed with renewed intensity. The whispers in my mind, which had faded to a background hum, suddenly clarified into a distinct impression. Gratitude, purpose, hope. It's thanking us, I realized aloud. Kayla nodded unsurprised. The Matrix has achieved a level of consciousness we didn't anticipate. It remembers what you did, how you recognized its agency when Orvin saw only a tool to be used. And the crystal shard fang, is it truly gone? She placed a hand on the Nexus surface, closing her eyes briefly, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. Not gone, she finally said. Transformed. Its pattern exists within the Matrix now, a distinct consciousness within the greater whole. I approached the Nexus, cautiously placing my own hand near hers on its surface. Immediately, the whispers intensified, forming clearer impressions. Recognition, welcome, invitation. It wants to show us something, I murmured. Kayla nodded, her eyes meeting mine over our outstretched hands. Together, I understood what she was asking, not just about this moment, but about the choice she'd offered earlier, about the future. Together, I agreed and pressed my palm fully against the Nexus beside hers. The world around us seemed to dissolve into pure light and sensation. Through our connection with the Matrix, I glimpsed possibilities beyond anything I'd imagined. New forms of communication, understanding across profound differences, growth that transcended the limitations of biology or technology alone. And at the center of it all, a vision of what could be not domination or subjugation, but true symbiosis between species, between worlds, between a human operative and a Dominion princess who had found common ground on a frozen planet at the edge of known space. When the vision faded and reality reasserted itself, Kayla and I stood with our hands still touching on the Nexus surface. The decision before me was momentous: return to Earth with my report or stay and help build something unprecedented. But looking into Kayla's violet eyes, seeing the same understanding reflected there, I realized the decision had already been made. Some bridges once built cannot be undone. Some connections once formed create their own gravity. The ice of Vyronis would continue to thaw, and with it perhaps the long Cold War between our species. Talk about a twist. Our hero has not only stopped Marshal Orvin's dangerous plot, but discovered that the crystalline matrix is far more than a weapon. It's a new form of consciousness, with the power to bridge humans and the Dominion. And that connection between Elias and Princess Kayla, definitely heating up even on this frozen world. But what will Elias choose, Earth or a new future with Kayla? And what other challenges await this unprecedented alliance? Hit subscribe right now and ring that notification bell so you don't miss the next installment in this cosmic saga. Drop a comment telling me what you think Elias should choose: duty to Earth or a revolutionary partnership with Princess Kayla. I read every comment and love hearing your thoughts. 3 days after the Matrix stabilization, I stood before the Dominion High Court, a semicircle of crystalline thrones occupied by the highest-ranking officials in the Vyronis outpost. At the center sat Kayla, her ceremonial armor gleaming under the chamber's phosphorescent light. Her expression remained neutral, betraying nothing of our shared experience in Sector 7. The human operative Elias Blackwood stands accused of espionage against the Dominion, announced the court herald, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. However, in light of his actions during the recent crisis, Princess Kayla has advocated for clemency. Murmurs rippled through the assembled Dominion elite. I kept my posture straight, my expression calm, despite the gravity of my situation. This was all part of the diplomatic dance, a necessary public proceeding to formalize whatever arrangement would follow. "Clemency is insufficient," declared a Dominion elder rising from his crystalline seat. "The human infiltrated our most sensitive facility. Regardless of subsequent events, such an offense demands consequence." Kayla inclined her head slightly. "Elder Tyvis speaks wisely," she acknowledged, "which is why I propose the riddle of ice." The chamber fell silent. Even I, with my extensive briefing on Dominion customs, had only heard whispers of this ritual. The ancient trial. Elder Tyvis's tone conveyed surprise. "No outsider has ever been permitted to attempt it. No outsider has ever aided in preserving the Matrix," Kayla countered smoothly. "Extraordinary circumstances merit extraordinary measures." I caught her gaze briefly as the court deliberated among themselves. There was something in her violet eye, a confidence that suggested this had been her plan all along. Finally, Elder Tyvis nodded gravely. "Very well. The human may attempt the riddle of ice. If he succeeds, his crimes will be absolved. If he fails," the elder's pale eyes fixed on me, "execution will be swift and merciful." "I accept the challenge," I said before anyone could object, my voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Kayla stood. "Prepare the Nexus chamber. The trial begins at moonrise." "You might have warned me about the execution part," I remarked as Kayla escorted me to my preparation chamber, a surprisingly comfortable suite rather than a cell. Her lips quirked in the ghost of a smile. "Would it have changed your decision?" "No," I admitted, "but I appreciate knowing the stakes." "The riddle of ice isn't actually a riddle," she explained, activating a holographic display. "It's a logic matrix embedded in Vyronis' oldest crystal formation. Initiates of the Dominion royal line must solve it to prove their mental acuity." The display showed a complex three-dimensional pattern of intersecting crystalline pathways, a labyrinth of light and shadow. "The objective is to trace the path of least resistance through the matrix," Kayla continued, "to find the flow that honors the crystal's natural structure." I studied the pattern, recognizing similarities to the matrix consciousness we'd encountered. "And if I select the wrong path?" "Neural feedback," she said simply. "Intensely unpleasant. Meaning painful enough to stop my heart," I translated. She didn't deny it. "The trial tests not just intelligence, but intuition, the ability to sense the underlying patterns of reality." "Like what I did with the crystal shard fang," I realized. She nodded. "Precisely why I believe you can succeed where no other outsider could." Her expression grew serious. "But Elias, you must understand, I cannot help you during the trial. To do so would invalidate the result." "I understand." I studied the holographic pattern more closely. "How long do most initiates take to solve it?" "The current record is held by my father. 4 hours, 17 minutes. I raised an eyebrow. "And how long do I have?" 1 hour. Of course, the court wouldn't make this easy. The Nexus chamber had been transformed from the site of our battle with Orvin into a formal trial arena. The stabilized matrix core pulsed in the center, surrounded by tiered seating for the court witnesses. At the heart of the chamber stood the ancient crystal formation, a twisting spire that predated the Dominion's arrival on Vyronis. As I approached the formation, the whispers returned to my mind, fainter than before but recognizable. The Matrix remembering me. "The human will now attempt the riddle of ice," Elder Tyvis announced. "May clarity guide his mind, or mercy his passing. Cheerful, Kayla took her place at the head of the court, her expression now fully the Ice Princess of Dominion legend. "Begin," she commanded. I placed my hands on the ancient crystal, and immediately the chamber around me seemed to dissolve. In its place appeared the three-dimensional maze I'd studied in the hologram, but vastly more complex with countless more pathways and intersections than had been shown. The trap was immediately apparent. They had shown me a simplified version, counting on my human arrogance to make me overconfident. I took a deep breath, forcing aside my initial panic. The key wasn't in memorizing the pattern that was impossible in the time given. The key was in what Kayla had said, finding the flow that honored the crystal's natural structure. I closed my eyes, shutting out the visual complexity to focus on the subtle vibrations beneath my fingertips. Each crystalline pathway resonated at a slightly different frequency, some harmonious, others discordant. Trust, flow, listen. The impression came not as words, but as concepts brushing against my consciousness. The matrix offering guidance without solution, showing me how to approach the problem rather than solving it for me. I opened my eyes with a new understanding. The riddle wasn't about finding the single correct path through impossible complexity. It was about recognizing that the complexity itself was an illusion, a test to see if the initiate would discard conventional analysis for a more intuitive approach. Instead of tracing pathways, I placed my palms flat against the crystal and simply felt. Where most initiates would methodically test each potential route, a process that would take far longer than my allotted hour, I surrendered to the crystal's natural resonance. Under my touch, certain pathways began to glow with subtle bioluminescence. Not the most obvious routes, but the ones that created the least disruption to the crystal's harmonic structure. I followed these illuminated paths not with my hands, but with my consciousness, projecting my awareness along them as I had done when communicating with the crystal shard fang. The maze shifted and flowed around me, responding to my approach. Where a Dominion initiate might impose their will on the crystal, forcing compliance, I allowed myself to be guided by its inherent patterns. 20 minutes into my allotted hour, I reached the heart of the formation. The central node pulsed once bright and clear, and the maze dissolved. I found myself back in the physical chamber, hands still pressed against the ancient crystal, which now glowed with steady blue light. The assembled court had fallen completely silent, expressions ranging from shock to disbelief to, in Kayla's case, carefully concealed satisfaction. "Impossible," Elder Tyvus finally breathed. "No one has ever completed the riddle so quickly, and certainly no human." "The crystal recognizes truth regardless of species," Kayla replied, rising from her seat. "Elias Blackwood has passed the trial. His previous offenses are absolved, as is our law." The elder didn't look pleased but nodded stiffly. "The court acknowledges the completion of the trial. The human is exonerated." As the court began to disperse, Kayla approached me, her formal mask still in place for the benefit of those watching. "The true test," she said quietly, "was never about finding the right path. It was about recognizing that forcing your way through creates resistance." I replied, understanding at last. The Dominion way versus a different approach. Her eyes met mine. "Perhaps there is wisdom in both. Strength and flexibility, structure and adaptation. Like a bridge between species." The corner of her mouth lifted slightly. "Precisely like that." 1 week after passing the trial, I stood on a balcony overlooking the vast ice fields of Vyronis. The landscape had changed subtly since the matrix stabilization patches of the ice showing faint crystalline patterns that pulsed with gentle bioluminescence. The planet itself was awakening to the matrix consciousness. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Kayla joined me at the railing, her formal armor replaced by a simpler outfit that nonetheless marked her royal status. The first signs of true symbiosis. Before I could respond, a Dominion messenger approached with rehearsed precision. "Princess Marshal Orvin demands the right of honor combat before his sentencing." I felt Kayla tense beside me. "On what grounds?" "He claims the humans' interference has tainted the evidence against him. By ancient law, he may challenge a witness to single combat to prove the truth of their testimony." "And he's challenging me," I guessed. The messenger nodded. "The Marshal invokes the throne of ice as battleground." After he departed, Kayla turned to me with barely contained anger. You don't have to accept. This is Orvin's final desperate move. He knows his sentencing tomorrow will mean permanent exile at best. If I refuse, he'll use it to cast doubt on everything that happened in Sector 7, I replied. The coalition you're building between moderates and progressives in the Dominion would be undermined. She stepped closer. He'll try to kill you, Elias. Dominion honor combat isn't about winning, it's about survival. And he has every biological advantage. I smiled slightly. Not every advantage. The Throne of Ice was aptly named an ancient arena carved into a massive glacier at the heart of the Dominion settlement. Centuries of ritual combat had polished its surface to a mirror sheen, with the actual throne being a towering spire of ice at the far end where the Emperor would traditionally observe. Today that throne remained empty, the Emperor still en route from the Dominion homeworld, but the stands surrounding the arena were filled with Dominion officials and warriors. News of a human participating in honor combat had spread quickly. Orvin stood at the far end of the arena clad in traditional combat armor that emphasized his already imposing physique. Despite his imprisonment, he appeared confident, almost smug. You accept the terms of honor combat, Elder Tyvus intoned from his position as overseer. Victory by submission or incapacitation. Death while permitted is not required for honor satisfaction. I accept, I replied, dressed in a modified version of my combat suit, reinforced where necessary but designed for maximum mobility. I accept, Orvin echoed, his cold eyes fixed on me. Though I cannot guarantee the human survival, our physiology differs so greatly. His message was clear. He intended to kill me and claim it was an unfortunate accident of biology. Begin, Elder Tyvus commanded, striking a crystalline chime that resonated through the arena. Orvin moved immediately, crossing the distance between us with shocking speed. I barely managed to evade his first strike, a blow that would have shattered ribs had it connected. Running already human, he taunted as I created space between us. How typical of your kind. I didn't waste breath responding. Orvin's advantages were obvious: superior strength, enhanced reflexes. Physiology adapted to Vyronis' harsh environment. Fighting him directly would be suicide. Instead, I needed to make him fight himself. As he pressed his attack, I continued to evade rather than block, redirecting his momentum, using the slick ice surface to maintain distance. Each failed assault visibly frustrated him, causing his attacks to become more forceful but less controlled. Stand and fight, sir, he snarled after a particularly aggressive sequence left him off balance. Why? I asked calmly, circling to maintain distance. So you can pretend this is about honor, rather than your wounded pride. His expression darkened. You understand nothing of Dominion honor. I understand you betrayed your emperor, I replied, voice pitched to carry to the watching crowd. That you were willing to risk countless lives to satisfy your ambition. I acted to preserve the Dominion's future, he shouted, charging again. This time I allowed him closer, slipping inside his guard to land a precise strike to a nerve cluster near his elbow. The arm temporarily numbed, throwing off his balance. The crowd murmured in surprise. No human should know the vulnerabilities of Dominion physiology so precisely. Kayla shared a few insights during my training. I explained, answering his unasked question, the benefits of cooperation between species. Rage contorted his features. She betrays her own kind by aiding you. She's securing a future beyond endless conflict. I countered, evading another attack. Something you're too blinded by hatred to see. Our combat continued a dangerous dance across the ice. Orvin landed several glancing blows, each powerful enough to leave bruising, but nothing decisive. I scored more frequent hits, targeting nerve clusters and pressure points, gradually wearing him down. The tide began to turn, and as Orvin's frustration overwhelmed his training, he committed fully to a powerful strike that, had it connected, might have ended the fight. Instead, I redirected his momentum, sending him crashing into the ice wall. For a moment, he lay stunned. I could have pressed the advantage, delivered a potentially fatal blow while he was vulnerable. The crowd seemed to expect it, silence falling as they anticipated the conclusion. Instead, I stepped back, allowing him to rise. Finish it, he growled, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. This isn't about finishing you, Orvin, I replied. It's about proving what's possible when we move beyond seeing each other as enemies. He lunged again, desperation making him predictable. I sidestepped, hooked his ankle, and sent him crashing to the ice. Before he could recover, I had him pinned my forearm across his throat, not crushing, but controlling. "Submit," I said quietly. "Live to see the future you fought so hard against. You might be surprised." For a long moment, he struggled against my hold pride, warring with reality. Then finally, he tapped the ice, twice the signal of submission. I released him immediately, stepping back as Elder Tyvis struck the chime again. "The combat is concluded," the Elder announced. "Honor is satisfied. The human's testimony stands unchallenged." The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some Dominion warriors clearly disappointed by Orvin's defeat, others murmuring in appreciation of the technical display. But it was Kayla's expression that I sought. In the stand-ins, a mixture of relief and something deeper, more personal. As I left the arena, passing Orvin being led away by guards, he spoke barely above a whisper. "This changes nothing. The old guard will never accept humans as equals." "They don't need to," I replied. "They just need to live long enough to see what comes next." The Imperial observation deck offered the most stunning view on Vyronis, a panoramic vista of ice fields now transformed by threads of crystalline growth spreading like luminous veins across the planet's surface. Beautiful and alien, yet somehow familiar, like the path forward we were forging. "My father's ship enters orbit within the hour," Kayla said, joining me at the viewport. "He's eager to meet the human who helped save his most valuable project and his daughter." "Nervous?" I asked, noting the slight tension in her posture. "The Emperor is not always predictable, even to his children." She turned to face me fully. "But he authorized my offer to you before the crisis. That much hasn't changed. The offer to stay on Vyronis to help develop the Matrix as a bridge between species rather than a weapon. To work beside Kayla as humanity's representative in a new kind of relationship with the Dominion. And perhaps, though never explicitly stated, to explore the undeniable connection that had formed between us." "Have you decided?" she asked, her usual composure slipping just enough to reveal genuine concern. Before I could answer, a communications officer interrupted with practiced deference. "Princess, we're receiving an unusual transmission from the Emperor's vessel. He requests both your presence and the humans for the reception." Kayla's eyebrows rose slightly, a significant display of surprise by her standards. "Both of us? That's unprecedented." The Emperor's arrival was a spectacle of light and sound, his massive flagship descending through Vyronis' atmosphere, trailing ceremonial energy patterns that painted the sky in Dominion royal colors. The reception hall had been prepared with exhaustive attention to protocol, with the entire Dominion hierarchy arranged according to rank and status. I stood beside Kayla conspicuously, the only human in a sea of Dominion elite. The whispers and glances made it clear how unusual my position was. When the Emperor finally entered, I understood immediately where Kayla got her commanding presence. Taller than most Dominion, with the same violet eyes, but deeper, more intense, he moved with the absolute confidence of one who had never needed to question his authority. Protocol dictated that he acknowledge the assembled dignitaries in precise order of rank, which made it all the more shocking when he walked directly to where Kayla and I stood. "Father," she greeted him with the formal Dominion salute. "Vyronis welcomes your..." He surprised everyone, including Kayla, by embracing her. "Protocol can wait," he said, his deep voice carrying through the suddenly silent hall. "I nearly lost you to Orvin's treachery." He released her and turned his penetrating gaze to me. "And you must be Elias Blackwood, the human who helped save my daughter and my most important project." I offered the Dominion formal bow I'd been practicing. "Your Majesty." A hint of amusement crossed his features. "Well executed, though unnecessary. Today we forged new protocols." He gestured for the assembled officials to gather closer. "What happened on Vyronis has accelerated plans I've been developing for decades." The Emperor moved to the center of the reception hall, his presence commanding complete attention. "The Matrix was never intended merely as a communication tool," he announced. "It represents the next evolution in consciousness, a bridge not just between human and Dominion minds, but potentially between all sentient species." Murmurs spread through the gathered officials. This was clearly news to most of them. "Orvin and his faction saw only the potential for domination," the Emperor continued. "They failed to understand that true advancement comes not from subjugating difference, but from synthesizing it." His gaze swept the assembly. The events here on Vyronis have proved this beyond doubt. He gestured to Kayla and me. A human operative and a Dominion princess working together accomplished what neither could have alone. They saved the Matrix from corruption, yes, but more importantly, they demonstrated a new possibility, cooperation across the boundaries that have defined our histories. The Emperor turned to address me directly. Elias Blackwood, I understand my daughter has extended an offer for you to remain on Vyronis as Earth's representative. I wish to formalize and expand that offer. He raised his voice to ensure all could hear. I propose an unprecedented alliance between Earth and the Dominion with Vyronis as its foundation. Equal partners in the development of the Matrix technology and its applications across our territories, led jointly by Princess Kayla and Elias Blackwood. The silence that followed was absolute. Then predictably, Elder Tyvus stepped forward in protest. Your Majesty, with all respect, this is too radical a departure from traditions that have led us to 17 conflicts in a decade. The Emperor cut him off smoothly. The old ways have brought us to the brink of a war neither side can truly win. It is time for a new approach. He turned back to Kayla and me. The choice, of course, remains yours. Earth may reject this proposal. You yourself may wish to return to your people rather than remain here. I glanced at Kayla, finding her already looking at me. In that moment of shared gaze, I saw all the possibilities that stretched before us. The challenges certainly, but also the potential to create something truly transformative. I accept, I said, my voice clear and caring. On behalf of myself, though, Earth's formal response will require proper diplomatic channels. The Emperor nodded, satisfied. As expected, arrangements are already being made for Earth's official representatives to visit Vyronis. He smiled slightly, though I suspect none will understand the Matrix or my daughter quite as well as you do. Later, as the formal reception transitioned to celebration, Kayla and I found a moment alone on one of the crystalline balconies overlooking the transformed ice fields of Vyronis. So, she said, her formal demeanor softening now that we were unobserved. You're staying. Was there ever any doubt? I asked. Humans can be unpredictable, she replied with a hint of a smile. One of your more interesting qualities. Wait, I laughed softly. Along with our stubborn refusal to tremble in the face of Dominion beasts or ice princesses. Precisely that. She moved closer, the distance between us charged with possibility. This path won't be easy, you know. There will be resistance from both sides. Centuries of distrust don't vanish overnight. Nothing worthwhile is ever easy, I replied. But I think we've proven we work well together under pressure. Her violet eyes held mine, all pretense of formality gone. Indeed we have. She gestured to the view beyond the balcony, the crystalline patterns spreading across the ice fields, bringing life and transformation to the frozen world. Vyronis is experiencing its first spring in centuries. The Matrix influence is changing the planet itself. A fitting metaphor, I observed, for what's happening between our species. And between us, she asked, more directness than I'd ever heard in her voice. I reached for her hand, a gesture that would have been unthinkable weeks ago, especially between us. As our fingers intertwined, a pulse of bioluminescence swept across the ice fields below the Matrix, responding to our connection, celebrating the bridge being formed between human and Dominion, between Elias and Kayla. The ice of Vyronis continued to thaw, and with it the long, cold history that had separated our worlds. What a journey, from enemies facing off on a frozen cliff to partners forging a new future for both species. Elias and Princess Kayla have not only stopped a dangerous plot, but started a revolutionary alliance that could transform the relationship between humans and the Dominion forever. And that personal connection between them, definitely heating up even on this ice world. If you love this cosmic adventure with its twists, challenges, and unexpected romance, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I bring new sci-fi and fantasy stories every week that will transport you to worlds beyond imagination. Drop a comment telling me what you think will happen next for Elias and Kayla. Will their unprecedented alliance succeed? What new challenges await them? I read every comment and can't wait to hear your thoughts.